My name is Tobias. I work at Boozt, and I have been doing that for the last 13 years. So I've been part of the whole building up the team and the platform team, as we call it here in Boozt. That's our tech team. And now I hear an echo. So if I possibly someone on. There you go. Yeah. I'll keep. Can you hear me now? I guess. I'll keep talking and then we'll see how it goes. So I'm, as I said, 13 years at Boozt. My current title is CTO for Boozt Fulfillment Logistics. And been part of building up the whole organization within the platform team and so on. I will talk about that, how we're organized and how we work in the big picture. But as my first slide, we always have to do a bit of presentation of the company. So I don't know, I nowadays, when I started, no one knew about Boozt as a company, and I had to spell the name all the time. But now most people, at least in Scandinavia, know who we are. But to give you a very small, quick snapshot, we launched in 2011, and we have Boozt.com and Booztlet.com. So two different sites running on the same platform. And we have a turnover, as you can see, has 6.8 billion SEK in 2022. 2023 is done, but we have a report in February, so I can't talk anything about that. But still growing. And then we have a big fulfillment center in Ängelholm, an hour north of Malmö, where we do all of our fulfillment to Europe. Moving forward. So we have 5 different development sites to give you a picture of how our development team looks like. We don't do consultants. We always employ people instead. So we have around 210 developers right now in these 5 different locations. One of them being Aarhus as well. So we have our own team in Aarhus doing some amazing stuff as well. So I recommend reaching out to them as well also. But Aarhus, Copenhagen, Malmö, Poznan in Poland, and then Vilnius in Lithuania. And then to give you a little picture of how organization looks like. So this is in essence how we're organized. And HR sometimes try to put this on a strict paper or a pyramid or something like that. And we like to call it more of an organism rather than organization. So as you can see, the inner circle here is all our different teams. And then you can see all the different areas that the teams are responsible for. So for instance, you have Team Fish on the top here. They're responsible for Fastlane, distributors, EDI, and so on and so on. So each team is responsible for different areas. So they have their own roadmap and they talk to the business and so on. So they're very independent team working on their project or their product. So if you want to, we actually took this from Spotify. So Spotify has 2 great videos around their culture and how they're working with it. They're old now, but very good. That's how we took and formed our organization around. So that's a good thing to look at if you want to learn more about how we work. Also good to know is Spotify themselves has said that that's not working for them. And there are some things not working when you do it like this, but that you can also Google further and see, why is Spotify's organization not working? And then you find out different things. Mainly it's about cross collaboration between the teams. It's more difficult to do when you have a setup like this. And then since we grew, this picture here is actually, we don't have all the teams in this picture here because we grew too many. So we have almost twice the amount of teams here. So we had to put another layer on top. So what we have different branches. So we have 6 different branches, engineering, core, logistics, web, app, and insights. So they are then a layer on top of the different teams. All the different teams are included into one of the branches. So that's one of the ways we have mitigated the cross collaboration between different teams, that within the branch it's easy to collaborate. But then the problem comes when you start to collaborate between the different branches also. But then if we go into how we started, I put in an headline where Agile is dead, and so it's an interesting headline. But how I see it, or how we see it maybe, is when you start with Agile, it's good to start with a very strict Agile. So you follow all the different things that you need to do. You follow the principles around it. So you do your sprints, you do your retrospectives, and you follow that very strictly. That's how you learn how to do Agile. But at some point, you need to move forward, and then you start doing flexible Agile instead. So you start doing what makes sense to you. So the whole point of Agile is being flexible. So if you're doing very, very strict Agile all the time, then that's not really Agile, for me at least. So flexible Agile is what we try to do. So each team is allowed to do Agile in their own way. We have different tips and tricks for them, but they're also allowed to use it in what makes sense to them. So not everyone is maybe doing retrospectives, not everyone's doing sprints, maybe doing Kanban instead, maybe doing Scrum and so on. So Agile is a tool to make things more flexible and to make things work. Simon, did you have a question there, or? No, it was just a hands up.
Yes, okay, cool. I'm just curious about the timeline from left to right here. Do you have?
Yeah.
How many? Is it months or years? What are we talking?
Yeah, so I rather say like this: when you start, then you start with say you are an organization that want to introduce Agile. Then I would like to start very strictly with some kind of strict, as I said. But then say it will take. It depends on how fast the organization is moving. So say it will take everything from 6 months to a couple of years before you move into flexible Agile. Some teams are faster than others, so some teams will absorb it faster. Because the whole principle is when you start understanding the principle behind Agile, then you can do certain things. Then you say, okay, what works for us? What can we cut out? What can we add? Do we do poker planning, or do we do other ways of figuring out scoring? So the more you understand your business and what you're doing, the better you can do flexible Agile instead. And then to add, if you see this is safe, please run away. Safe is, in my world, horrible. It's very, very big. It's a lot of certifications. It's extremely strict, and you need to do it in a certain way. For me, this restricts Agile in a sense that I don't think Agile was meant to be. So that's just my recommendation to the whole thing. That is actually why we created this more organizations, that we built up small teams, around 4 to 6 developers in each team, and they run themselves instead of having a big organization trying to run Agile across all teams instead. So that's how we moved forward. And then, so how we have developed forward. So in essence, I have a slide here on how we work in Boozt. So first of all, we try things out manually first. So we rarely automate the first thing we do. When we have a product, we don't start automating immediately. We need to understand the problem in depth first. So then we do manual things and then find the most optimal process, and then we start automating instead. We also do a phase 1, that's a MVP product. So we try to fail as fast as possible. So whenever business comes with a new thing, we try to digest it into a very, very small thing and deploy that one. And then when that's live, then we can start iterating and base it on data, move that forward instead. And then something is very important. We always ask why we do certain things. So if we get a request, it's important that whoever is doing it understands why we're doing the request. If a button should be green, why do we want it green? Is it to increase conversion rate? Well, is it better with orange then instead? And we can have a better discussion if both parties understand why we're doing it. And then we always look at, if we have 10 times the volume of what we have today, what can we see as bottlenecks going forward? So if we have 10 times the amount of traffic, 10 times the amount of databases, 10 times the amount of warehouses, 10 times the amount of developers, and so on. So what can we see will be a problem in the near future if we scale as we're in a bigger growth. And then we talk problems, processes, and concepts, and not tech systems or boundaries. So it's better to talk about the problems and processes and so on, and not, we can't do that because that system is not set up like that. Then we have to change the system instead. And then we challenge everything to make sure we get better as well. So the whole thing around why and so on. And then I have this slide here. Wow, you can't see the image now. That's fantastic. I'm gonna send that out for you later. But it talks around, Google has done a research around what makes a team great. So it's psychological safety is the number one. So meaning it's okay to fail. So if you're working around culture and so on, make sure that it's okay for anyone to fail in anything, and then you may have a greater path forward and a greater speed when you're working on things. Well, there you go. That's the research. I had it in my presentation here. So yeah, psychological safety is number one. Dependability, structure and clarity, meaning and impact. So those are the things that makes a team very, very efficient. When you start trusting each other, when it's okay to do mistakes, and when you have a clarity on things, and you have a meaning on your work, and you can see the impact of what you're doing. But the number one is psychological safety, meaning failing is okay. And then what we do, I actually put up a slide here around our different systems. So this is the systems that we work with. So we have what we call Podium is on the top here. That's our web shops. Then we have ProPilot as a content management system. Then we have a system called Platform Services that is like the core thing of sending data around. Finance system, Fastlane as a warehouse management system, a CRM system called CSI, brand portal, partner portal, so on. So what we have done at Boozt, all the boxes that are white here are systems that we have done ourselves completely from scratch. The gray ones here are third-party systems that we use. So that's what we have created in terms of technology. All those different systems is something that we can change however we want it to be. So whatever business wants to do, we can change that. So that's why we talk about processes and efficiency instead of, no, the system can't do that. Because then if a system becomes old or outdated, then we just do a new version, then we refactor it instead. So ProPilot, for instance, that has a new version now called ProPilot 1. So we did a new content management system for that one instead. So after 5-6 years, the first one was outdated, and then we just had to create a new one with better technology instead. Yes. And I have some good practices for you when how we see things. So for us, we want to go as fast as possible in terms of development, but we also want to be fairly safe. There's a great quote here that our CEO always used to have back in the days. Now we're on the stock market and things like that, so he's more, I don't know if he's using this anymore, but we are using it in the platform team. So Mario Andretti is an old Formula 1 driver, and he said, if everything seems under control, you're not going fast enough. So you should always have a certain feeling of the things we're doing is slightly shaky, but still that we are in some kind of, we know what we're doing. So how do we then work with being fast and safe at the same time? So speed for us is the whole agile principles around think it, build it, shape it, and tweak it. So we try to get it out as fast as possible. We have an idea and we try to get it out as fast as possible, and then we start tweaking it in the production system. And then how we do that in a safe way, then we have our different quality things. So we do reviews, code reviews, we do feature toggles, percentage of users, automatic testing, monitors, and alerts. So I have my next slide here is to show you more around those different things. So we have, for instance, the code reviews. I hope everyone is doing that. For us, it's a way of knowledge sharing. So you have another set of eyes on the code, and you get another person to know more about the code and what you're doing. And at the same time, you're learning when you're doing it, and you increase the code quality. So code reviews shouldn't take over. It shouldn't be the only thing that we focus on. It shouldn't be like the overall thing that is super important to find all the things in it. But it's a good way of sharing different information on what is going on and what we're doing here. And can you please have a look at this part here and so on. So code reviews are important, but it shouldn't be everything. You can't find all the different things in code reviews, but you can find enough in it. And then we have feature flags or toggles. So basically when we deploy things into production and it's not enabled yet. So there's a config saying it's disabled. And when all the bits and pieces are out in production, then we enable it again. So we enable it, and then we monitor to see if there's any errors or mistakes. And if it's too many, then we disable the function as well. So we don't need to roll back and do extra things like that. We can enable and disable the feature very, very fast instead. And then we have, thanks to our great engineering team, we have a canary deployment. So when we deploy, we send out the new version in a percentage to the users. So some users, like 10%, get the new version, and then you start monitoring to see if there's any error rates increasing and so on. And then you roll it back if that's necessary, and so on, still with the featured flags and so on. And then we do, some teams do test-driven development. Some teams works in other methods. We like test-driven development. It focuses a lot on making tests and unit tests and so on. So it's a good way for us to making sure that we think things through before we're working on certain things. Again, it's voluntary to do. So different teams works in different ways with this one here. Then I wanted to talk a little bit about continuous integration, continuous deployment. So we deploy around 40 to 50 deploys per day into production. That's for all systems. So we might maybe have 20 systems or something like that. So around two per day is normal to do. How we've done that is we started off by having a deployment manager. So one person that was responsible for everything being sent out. And then that person would deploy it out and take a look at all the errors and stuff, and then roll it back if necessary, or contact the responsible team or something like that. But then we moved into what is called restricted repository. So you have senior engineers or team leads that they're doing deployments. So we moved it out to a bigger crowd to do it. Same thing there with manual deployments and so on. But you still had to wait for someone to send it out. But what we're doing now is that it's more or less open. So developer themselves will send out the different changes, but they're also responsible for the whole thing. You send it out, you do different feature toggles, you do different canary deployments. It's all being done automatically. And then if it's a rollback is needed, then we roll it back and so on. So we've increased the span of people who can deploy dramatically. So then we just said we're just going to trust everyone instead, and that everything is going to work. And then we're going to just have a free-for-all deployment party instead, and just monitor all the systems and making sure everything's working. So that's the whole thing with around trust as well. It's important to trust people because they usually know way better, at least way better than me on the specific areas that they're working on. And as I said, we're very, very focused on monitoring, alerts, error rates, and everything around that. We're using Google Analytics, of course. It's not live, so we rely more on Datadog for the whole tech stack. And then we have our own dashboards as well. So we use Datadog for all of our logging. We set up different channels and so on. So we see immediately we use Slack. So we see immediately in Slack when something goes wrong. And then the appropriate team will react on it and make sure that everything is fixed and so on. And the team is responsible for they roll back or whatever is needed to, or patch it if that's a better way of doing it. The first question we usually do if there's an error is, do we need to revert or do we need to patch it? And the cool thing is when we can patch it instead, so we don't need to revert it. So monitoring is very, very important for us. We actually have, it's the most embarrassing thing is when business units see the error before we do, or even worse is if customers see the errors before we do. So the whole point is that the platform team should be the ones who see the problems first and act on it. And then a good way that we look at things, if you want to benchmark on, how fast you're doing certain things. So questions to ask, deployment frequency. Can you deploy multiple times per day? For us, once a week is too slow. We deploy all the time. And you have lead time for changes. 1 hour is great. 1 week is too slow, and because you usually, as right here, we forget what we did yesterday. So it's always good to do this as fast as possible and as fresh as possible. To keep the focus on the whole thing, because then you leave it and hopefully it works. And if you have to go back after a week or a month, then it's more difficult to fix it. And then you have mean time to detection and recovery. So 10 minutes is perfect. I would actually say that's a bit too long. I'd rather have like a minute or something like that. An hour is too slow, depending on the time of day, of course. If it's in the middle of the night, then it might be good. We have actually different SLAs on the different systems. So our web shop is the one that needs to be up and running all the time. It cannot be down. The warehouse management system, for instance, that we have agreed it can be down for up to 4 hours before it becomes critical for the business. We are never down 4 hours, but it's good to have different benchmarks on different systems. And it's good to have that discussion with the business as well. What is the most important thing, and how do we do our different error budgets and so on, and making sure that we're all on the same page. Then we have our error budget. So aim for less than 10% reverts. And then, as I said, agree on the product with the product owners on the acceptable error budget. So it's good to talk to the business about that one. And then we have postmortems, we think is very, very important. So whenever something has happened that has been a big impact, not small things, because that doesn't make sense, but a big impact, business knows about it, it has been a lot of work, it's been a lot of reverting and so on, then we do a postmortem. So basically it's a report where no names are put in. So it's an anonymous report on what went wrong. So what we do is we have a timeline of things, and that's usually a Slack channel conversation. So you can see all the different conversation that was made and how the thinking process were being done in terms of finding out the error. And then there's what went wrong and the action points to make sure we mitigate this problem going forward. So it's actually a good thing sometimes to read through those and see different errors and big things that has been going on. And it could be everything from electricity problems in the warehouse or a cloud outage or whatever it is. So for us, it's a very good thing too. And it's not so much that you need to go back and read them again. It's more when you write that report, you learn, and then you create tickets based on that one. And then you can leave it as well. So I'm actually on my last slide now. So I have some, my last point. If you want to take something with you into your organization, these are my points. So try to move from strict Agile to flexible Agile as fast as possible. When you understand how Agile is working, then take the bits and pieces that works for you and create your own Agile framework in your organization. And then different teams will have different ways of working in the organization as well. And that's just normal. And then for us, speed is everything. We need to be as fast as possible. That makes us very great at what we're doing. If we can deploy super fast, we don't want to have like a 3 months project or 6 months project, development project. We'd rather be very, very fast in sending something out, because then things change as we go forward. So we'd rather have it live and then work on it going forward in the production environment and gather the data. And have failed safely. So make sure that people don't get nervous when there's a failure. Make sure that people are okay with the whole failing. I know that I made tons of mistakes working on this. So it's just to, give them a pat on the back, saying, good stuff. Let's focus on the next thing going out instead, and just to make it a good thing instead. And then you have the whole thing around understanding the problem is super important. We try to empower our teams as much as possible so they understand what the problem is. They need to understand the business as great as possible, because then they can work on the problem better. Don't overwork specifications. It's better to put everyone in a whiteboard session and just brainstorm for 2-3 hours and then you're done. Don't put weeks into specifications, because they will change no matter what. Just try to get the basics in place, get the overall problem descriptions in place, and then just roll it out. Do a minimum viable product, and then just roll it out. So that's my second point here as well. Focus on the minimum viable product in a phase 1. Just get it out no matter what. Try to condense what the business problem is as much as possible, and then you ship it, and then you see how it works, and then you can have a good discussion with the business going forward. And then people are the number one. So trust the people. They're hopefully smarter than you, and hopefully a great understanding of what they're doing, and just listen to them, ask how they will solve problems, ask them why they're working at your companies, and very interesting question to get answers on and so on. So listen to your people and trust them as much as possible. That's been super good for us. So that's my last slide. I'm on the thank you and question and answer slide now.
Thank you for that, Tobias. So Simon, will you moderate the questions for us?
Yes. So again, thank you for the talk, Tobias. I think we will do the questions in the chat. We don't have any other fancy tools, so we'll basically just take them top down, and then we see how long we will continue with that.
Yeah.
So the first one, I think you talked about the postmortems, but Anders is asking, how about pre-mortems? And Anders, you of course just unmute if you have more words you want to put into it.
I can answer that, and you can fill in, Anders, if you want later on. But we do pre-mortems as well, especially before Black Friday. So Black Friday for us is, we call it the Super Bowl of e-commerce. It's end of November. We start in August, September somewhere. So we do a 3-month preparation before we actually execute. So for us, Q1 and Q2 is development phases. Then we do all of our big developments. We take the most risks, and then we move into a maintenance phase in Q3 and then execution in Q4. So we do pre-mortems on certain things. What can go wrong? And then we actually go back, look at the pre-mortem, and we see, okay, what did go wrong? Were we actually correct? And can we adjust it somehow going forward? This is fairly new for us, though. So we worked way more on post-mortems than pre-mortems, but we do like it as a concept.
Thank you. And Anders cannot talk. He just wrote, so I
Cool.
think he will maybe can add a comment if he have any more. But then we have Jonas. You can answer yourself or ask yourself.
Yeah, sure. So I just wonder, considering your level of monitoring, your ability to release, and your speed, do you use any sort of chaos engineering to kind of in your preparation for Black Friday, for instance? That could be an interesting aspect.
Yeah. Oh, how do I answer this? I know I have a lot of my team here on the call too, so I need to answer this in a political correct way. We don't have a dedicated chaos engineers like a team that's doing that. We have since we're moving this fast, we more or less have people that are chaos engineers without maybe actually being having that role, if that's a good way of doing it. But that's the whole point as well. I mean, how can we stress test? And we're actually doing the stress testing we actually do is that's part of a Black Friday preparation too. So we try to take down our site actively before Black Friday. So we push in as much traffic as we can until it breaks. And then we roll back and see, where did it break? Was it a database problem or a traffic problem or something like that? And then we try to improve that. And then we go forward again and we go to a breaking point and then we roll back and so on. So we try to do that 3 or 4 times to see where we actually have the bottlenecks. And we do this in production. So if you can see our site, if that is slightly unstable in October, that's because the engineering team is playing around with some of the stuff. We do that with the business as well. So we try to negotiate different times where we can do it and see where it's safe and so on. But end of the day, production is the best test environment that you have. So it needs to work, because then you go through all the different firewalls, all different infrastructure and all different code changes and so on. So yeah, we have that. And we have fantastic people in the team also that stress testing the system also, not deliberately, but that's part of the deal.
Thank you. Then Søren have a question, and I wrote a somewhat similar question afterwards. Can you tell about the core roles in your organization and in your teams? And I asked, can you explain how you organize? Do you use Guild? And again, I saw you mentioned the product owner. Do you also have a Scrum Master or coach? Yeah. So maybe just a few words on your organization.
Yes. Yeah. So no Scrum Masters at all. No coaches. I'm actually a certified Scrum Master, but that's a long time ago. So I think that's not valid anymore. But what we do is we have different. So we have product managers, and they control the development, especially in the web branch area and app branch area. We also have it in the core and logistics, but that's something that we've added later in the process. So what we did back in the days were that all the different teams, the developer themselves, had usually was a team lead, or so they would organize their own backlog and their own roadmap. And that was part of the whole thing where you need to understand how the business is working. So they were very tightly connected to the business, understanding, for instance, the return process in the warehouse, or if you have like a customer service section where you have the phone system or the queuing to the phone system and so on. So we use more of our developers to do that. But then more and more now, we have hired some great product managers to help us out in this organization, because we found there was more and more, not a waste of time, but we could focus the developers more to the coding part, and then the product managers will help out as defining the whole structure and what we should do. But the product managers are very much embedded with the developers and the business part. So we don't have any strict walls between developers and product managers and business. They all collaborate together, but then you have certain roles that are doing more of the things and the other ones. Did that answer the question?
Let's hear Søren first. I don't know.
I'm just curious, do you both have product managers and product owners?
Yeah, actually, I know I wrote product owners here, but we actually don't have product owners. For us, it is the product managers have a hybrid role in that sense. But then we also have business parties that are product owners, but we don't have an official title called product owner. That's more people that are very driven and concerned about certain products that they usually decide on where it should go, in a collaboration with the product managers and the development team as well. Because usually, since we try to understand as much as possible how it's working, then we have the developers usually give feedback back. So if we do it this way instead, it will be made faster and more efficient rather than this here. So you have different discussions on the end solution of things. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. And
yeah.
Just a short question again. How do you deal with the architecture? Do you have a team architecture on each team, or is that the lead developer, or can you?
Yeah. So
elaborate?
we have what we call our engineering branch. Is they're the one that you have DevOps team and SRE team and productivity teams in that one, and they can help out in terms of architecture and so on to different areas. What we do is we have chapters within each branch. So we have we can have a database chapter, we can have a front end chapter, we can have a logistic chapter, and so on. And they're the ones responsible for that different area from a technical point of view. So they will do the different architectural decisions and so on. But then you can always get help from an engineering branch also. So you can, if an engineering branch is then, it's not always because they're way more advanced. It's more because they have an overall understanding of the whole infrastructure of all the different systems. So they can say, oh yeah, but in the web area here, we use this solution here, and that might work in the logistics now as well. And we have fairly the same technology in all the different areas. It differs somewhere, but so it's easier for us to just reuse different ways of working for different branches.
Yes, I think we'll take the next question. So Sune asked, how do you choose between buying or building a system? And Sune, I see you live, so feel free to add.
I'll start answering, and then Sune, you just jump in if you need to. But we built most of our things, and we've been called crazy for all these 13 years that I worked here. Do I recommend others to build everything themselves? Not necessarily. It is a slightly crazy choice to do. For us, it's worked out extremely well. Mostly because of all the great people that we have in the team. It's fantastic to see how fast we can change things now. It's also highly problematic. We don't have anyone to call. If there's something goes wrong, it's always on us. So we need to do our own support areas and our own on-call duties and things like that. So there's pros and cons in the whole thing. I'm not sure. The question is, do we save money on the whole thing? Maybe in terms of license and so on. But then you also have a big development team that you're running too. So for us, it's about, we really like to be as fast as we are right now. So we're very happy with our choice that we made. when we started doing this, we were extremely small, so that was easy for us to start building. But it's great to have it right now. If I would recommend, say you have a huge organization like Mask to redo all the system and build them themselves, that would be slightly crazy to do. Very fun though. If you would do that, start with a very small project. So build a small component first and try to integrate into the other existing systems, and then you expand from that part. We actually focus on the data part ourselves. So we wanted to control the data system ourselves, because then we can migrate to other systems easier. If we have all the data in one place, then we can just migrate into other systems. So that's my tip.
So basically what you're saying is that we started out doing it and we continue doing it because we started out doing it.
Yeah, that's a good way too. But then again, do we just do it because we once started with it and that we're stuck in our own thinking? No, I mean, we're very happy that we took that decision. And so the end game or where we are right now, it's great for us. We can do all the different things that we need to do, and it's very, very fast. So I think it was a happy, lucky decision what we did in the beginning.
Cool, thanks.
Then we have, there's two questions in one, but let's start with the first one. Is the team in one location and do you work with remote teams? So I think you mentioned that somewhat, but maybe you can tell about if they are all sitting together or are they spread across location, your teams?
It depends. As I've shown you on the map, we're 5 different development locations. So some teams sit in the same location, all of them, but some team have split out as well. So they can be, you can have one person in Lithuania and one in Malmo and one in Aarhus and so on. So it depends a little bit on the teams and the competences on where they're sitting. We have we have a warehouse in Ängelholm, so it's very good, I assume, to have that development team in Ängelholm, close to the warehouse. It is not. We have 3 different teams working for the logistics. 2 of them are in Malmo and 1 is in Vilnius. So we work remotely. We do whenever we need to discuss something, we just do a call and make sure that we spread information as much as possible. So a lot happened through the pandemic, of course, as you all know. That helped a lot to work in different remote ways instead. And then we bring the people over. So we just, whenever there's a need for people to fly into the headquarters in Malmo, then we do that and set up meetings and so on. So we try to be as flexible as possible as well in that one. We don't restrict in terms of that one team needs to be together physically. It just needs to work. As long as the results are there, then.
Thank you. And there was a part 2, and Mila, if you're here, you can of course chip in. How does your technology work? Is it all cloud-based or are you also mainframe heavy?
We started mainframe heavy, and that worked extremely well for us as well. But then at some point there was too much maintenance and scaling and hardware and things like that. So we actually moved everything into the cloud. So we are with the Google Cloud platform, and all of it is in Google Cloud platform. And even we run something called AutoStore, which is an automated solution for the warehouse, and that has a cube and there's a matrix, and we have the world's biggest automation of that kind. And even those servers are in the cloud, even though that was we were recommended not to do that, but that works very well. So very much in the cloud. We also have some Amazon Web Services as well.
Good. And yeah, I think we have, if you have time, we have 5-6 more questions, and then I think we will cut it after that. So Sune, since you're here, you can maybe just ask it. I can see you.
Yeah, that's more about the data management, data governance across the whole system landscape, because it ties a little bit back to my previous question, because when you build yourself, you also have a lot of flexibility and you might just start using data across the platform. And a lot of rules says that you're not allowed to. You can only use data for what it was, the purpose of that data.
Yes.
That's one thing. The other thing is AI, because that's a big thing right now, I guess, for most people. You need a lot of data for that. That also kind of impacts that situation. So how do you manage that?
So we have, I mean, GDPR was a big thing when it came in 2018. So we focused a lot of work on that, where we tried to clean up as much as possible. But of course, as you say, I mean, we have to do all that work ourselves. So we have our legal team, they're chasing us with a blowtorch, usually saying, you know, you need to show us all the data. Where is it? Do we send anything to the US? You can't do that. And then we have to, you know, okay, is this company okay? So all the different companies that we have as a third party, we have a data processing agreement with. So we're very stern on that one as well. We need to know what they're doing. We need to know where they're storing it and so on. And that's the same thing with us. Now, I just told you that we have Google Cloud Platform, which is an American company. They're still, the servers are in Europe, but if you know about GDPR, that doesn't matter at all. If since it's an American company, they can just take all the data no matter what. So we're working a lot on this. We try to, the effort is we have isolated data tables that is locked in some sense. Sensitive data is not something that you can use all over the place. And then if you mention AI as well. So, and I mentioned our Aarhus team that we have, that we actually are a data science team. So they're sitting with all the machine learning and AI and all those super cool products that we're doing. But they also need to have, they have certain rules as well. They can only use data that we are allowed by customers to use. And then we can see patterns, of course. You can use anonymized data and you can see different patterns and so on. And that's what our main use case is, that you see different return rates and so on, but you don't dig down into personal details. But you can see trends and different items and so on that we need to work with. So, I mean, the whole thing around data science, we worked for a very long time with. I know AI is a big hype now, but we've never really promoted ourselves in it because we just, it's like the question is, oh, do you use databases? I mean, yes, of course, it's a tool. And that's the same thing with AI. Yes, of course, we're using AI, or machine learning. I mean, it's a way of working with data that's very, very efficient for us. So everything around size recommendations and product descriptions, or different different manual work that you do around items and so on. We do that a lot. We have around, to give you an idea, we have around 900,000 different items in the warehouse. So it's difficult for us to do that manually. We need some help.
Thank you. So I don't know, but Sule, I'll take the next one, and then you can, if we have time, I think there was a new question again, but we have Rob. So how do you estimate a new initiative or idea from the business?
Yeah, I mean, we had different rounds of poker planning and so on. Usually, the main thing is we rather focus on the business value. So if we need to balance things out, we choose the one with the biggest business value. Then we can maybe have some t-shirt scale on, you know, this one here is a very, very small thing, and it doesn't have the same business value as this one here, but we can do it very, very fast. So then we talk to the business, okay, we can do this super fast. We can do this in a day, and then we can start on the big one here. And so we have back and forth around a discussion on what should be done first and so on. And then we like to, there's something we call resource starvation. We always have too few developers, and usually that's good because then you maintain a good backlog. We want to have things that are not valuable to be, they should dwindle down into the backlog, right? So we work on the things that has the most impact and the highest value, but it can also be the most complicated things that we need to do. If we need to do our own ERP system, we have to do that because it's a bottleneck for the business going forward in terms of growth. So we don't plan it strictly in an agile sense, with that we sit down and everyone is doing the values and so on. We rather just have a discussion saying, okay, this is the most important thing. It's aligned with the business, it's aligned with the developers. Then we just do that, and then we are transparent with the backlog going forward as well.
Thank you. Then we have Signe, and again, feel free to add if I'm missing anything, but who is supporting creation and maintenance of the psychological safety in the teams?
Ooh, good question. We have leadership training, and also within the platform team, we have all of our team leads. We gather once per month and do different improvement areas for them, and where they can ask questions and stuff like that. So they can bring up different scenarios and so on. But most of all, it's sitting in the walls here at us. So it's you know, a developer starting at us, we expect them to break something within the first week. And then when you do that, you get a pat on the back and saying, you know, good job. That was their first breakage. And then we hopefully it's not the same error being done more than once. And that's usually not the case. But it's just to, you know, it's within the walls here that is okay to do mistakes. And then we have I have a colleague of mine, Johnny. He likes to do fuck up nights where we share just different mistakes that we've done in the past, and they're usually hilarious. And that's not just for Boozt history, but more, you know, throughout your whole career, where you have more of the veterans sharing different war stories and things like that. And it's just to show that, you know, no one is going to die if there's a mistake. It's just we trust you, and you just keep on doing the things that you do.
Really awesome. So to what extent is the organization bossless? So what level of hierarchy do you have?
I mean, we have our group CTO. He's head of the whole platform team, and then underneath that one, there's a layer of directors. So I'm part of the director team. I'm CTO for the logistic part, but then we also have platform directors where we are 6 or 7, something like that. And then you have a manager layer, and then so managers are usually managers for a group of team leads. And then you have the team lead, which is responsible for a team. So we still have a hierarchy, but it's also we try to use that communication should be as transparent as possible as well. We use the bosses to facilitate for the rest of the team. So take away, you know, different things around, you know, HR discussions maybe, and organizational things, and can we approve this area here? So it's mainly, I think we see the management level as more of a facilitator for different teams. So the teams will say, okay, we need this here. I say, okay, I'll try to get that approved, and, you know, work on that, and then we can work forward. So I think we see it more as a facilitator layer than actually more like a boss layer, if that makes sense.
Thank you. I'll move a little fast here so we can get the last one. So how do you manage dependencies between teams? To what extent can the teams work independently? That was
No, they can work super independently. That's not the problem. The problem is, as you point out, when you start to cross collaborate between the teams, that's where the issues start, because you have different roadmaps. You need to maybe sync roadmaps and stuff like that. And when you maybe have 5 different teams, that becomes problematic to, you know, you gather everyone in one room and try to figure out when different things should be ready and so on. So that's actually something that we're not great at. We're still working on that and trying to find out different ways of collaborating without adding extra overhead into the whole thing. It still needs to be flexible and fast. So yeah, it's something that we're working on forward.
Thank you. And then it's a larger question. Let's see if you can follow along. In this org structure you just explained, do you have a separate product backlog managed by product managers and a separate engineering backlog managed by engineering managers? And are the engineering team domain specific or full stack journey teams?
Yeah, so the engineering teams are more of they have responsible for all of the tech, so they're not necessarily specified to one tech. They're very back-end heavy usually, but we have different competences in that one as well. And then we have one backlog that has both business initiatives and tech initiatives, because it's important for us to leave room for different tech areas as well. And we do the tech improvements to scale the business. So it's not that we do it because it's fun and we want to do different random tech things because it's entertaining. It all correlates to the different business. So we are also very open to the business with that one, that we need to do this thing here in order for you to scale your different markets. So it's intertwined. Some periods we are very business heavy, some periods we're very tech heavy. So it depends on the period that we're going into. It depends on the different teams. We get requirements sometimes from the engineering team, say everyone needs to update to MySQL 8, for instance. So you need to add that into your roadmaps, and then let us know if you have any questions and so on. So yeah, we try to work dynamically with it, but there are room for tech improvements as well, which is very important.
Thank you. And then how does the organization address security-related threats?
We have, it's part of the engineering team now as well, the security area. So we use something called HackerOne, which is people actively trying to hack our sites. So we give them different scopes, and then there are external people that is finding vulnerabilities within ourselves. And then we do security training internally, and then we also have people internally that focus on different best practices and how to make it as safe as possible. And we do external help sometimes from different companies to review the different things. We have our yearly audit as well, of course, that we go through different things and improve and try to take different bits and pieces and work it into a roadmap.
Great. And then a good question to end with. So can you elaborate on the headline, Agile is dead? For me, it seems that you have a high level of Agile maturity with a lot of flexibility. And yeah, I think we discussed that, but maybe you can end on that.
Good point. Sometimes you just want to have an edgy headline, but I do believe that Agile in the strict sense should not be used. You start learning with strict Agile and then you move into flexible Agile. So Agile in the sense that you should do everything in a certain way is, for me, a legacy thing. So that part is dead. And then when you go into flexible Agile, that is the part that is alive going forward.
Perfect ending. So Agile Aarhus, we just want to thank you, of course, Tobias and Boozt for leaning in here. And really cool that you have an Aarhus site. We will definitely see if we can team up with you at a later point.
Yeah, they're amazing.
And to the rest, thank you for joining, and thank you for all of the participation and engagement. We will see you in a couple of months' time, so please have a look at Meetup, where the next virtual session will be announced. Thank you.
Great, thank you for having me.
Yeah, thank you.